I'm Noni, I'm here from Electron. We're an energy tech company focused specifically on building blockchain platforms in the energy sector. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about, give you a little bit of energy context, because a lot of things are changing in energy even without blockchain, and then talk a little bit about what we're doing in the space and why we're using blockchain in the first place. But before I begin, a little bit of background about Electron. So we were founded in November 2015. So we're 3 years old, making us simultaneously like a very young company by normal standards and very, very old in the energy blockchain space. When we first started, I think there were about five other companies in this space, and now there's something like over 150, which is really exciting to see other people are kind of seeing what we're seeing the potential in this space. And yeah, we are a mixed team of a lot of blockchain experience, but also a lot of energy backgrounds as well. What else? We're not quite global yet. We're based in East London, as in all reputable startups. Have spent some time in Silicon Roundabout, but we do have a couple of international projects in South Korea and Switzerland that I'll touch on later. And yeah, cool. So to start with, what is happening in energy? So in short, if you kind of ask what's changing in energy, and specifically electricity, the short answer is everything. If you cast your mind back not even 20 years, at the beginning of early 2000s, and you had a couple of generators, 80 maybe, and kind of exporting electricity very, very reliably onto the grid. And these are kind of your coal, your nuclear, and your gas. And you know what they're going to put out because you put the fuel in, and they do what you tell them to do. And exporting high voltage, low voltage into your homes. And you have millions of passive end consumers who kind of use electricity in a very predictable way. No one has huge electricity kind of users at home. No one has an EV, no one has a solar panel. It's very predictable. You fast forward to now, and you've now got over 1 million generators. So we've gone from 80 to 1 million. And the vast majority of these are renewables, which is obviously great in a lot of ways. We're reducing the carbon intensity of the grid, going towards our Paris goals, etc., etc., etc. However, the way these things have been connected to the grid is in a completely uncoordinated way. So effectively, there's no single registry, there's no one in control of adding all of these new assets to the grid. It's not just solar panels, it's also batteries, it's also electric vehicles. For example, when you want to put a large battery into the system, you have to talk to your distribution network operator, effectively the people that run the low voltage cables. If you want to buy an electric vehicle and install a fast charger, it's effectively the same kind of thing. I mean, one of them has wheels and one of them doesn't. They have exactly the same effect on the electricity grid. But with one of them, you tell the Department for Transport. And they have nothing to do with electricity. And what's more, they're absolutely not going to share that information. Because sharing information is not something government departments like to do, especially not with each other. So we have these millions of assets joining the grid, and we also have two-way flows of power suddenly happening all over the space. So again, before, you have a nice one-way flow from your big power generators down to your passive end consumers. And now you suddenly have all of these people exporting electricity all over the grid, both at the high voltage and at the low voltage. And what this does is this creates constraints, effectively bottlenecks in the grid, where there's electricity trying to go one way and it simply can't. And what that results in is people having to turn down their renewable electricity. They get curtailed, which is a very nice way of saying unplugged from the grid. So there's a slight horror story of a lovely big solar farm that got turned off for 2 summers because it was simply just exporting too much electricity and no one knew what to do with it. Because obviously because of the lack of coordination in installing these things, there's no oversight saying there's a lot of demand over here. Why don't we install, the generation over here? There's some sunshine. It's Cornwall, fill it with solar panels. Who's actually using that much energy in Cornwall? Turns out not very many people. So it's a huge problem the grid is facing today. And the last problem that all this potentially exciting things is creating is data fragmentation. So like I said, there's no coordinating entities, there's no single registry, there's no single pot of information about what all these changes that are happening. And as a result, people that are meant to be operating the grid, people that are meant to be sorting things out, don't know what's out there. Like if a generator is small enough, all of the network operators can't see it, and yet when you have millions of tiny devices, they start to have a very, very real effect. So, in short, 80 assets to lots of assets, two-way power flows where they weren't before, and data fragmentation. No one knows what's out there. So that's the energy context. And now back to blockchain, which is the reason why we're all here tonight. So I'll just go briefly through this one, as I'm gathering from conversations in the room. There's a lot of knowledge already here. So in short, what can blockchain bring to the table? Well, kind of blockchain 1.0, what people got very excited about is it's bringing effectively peer-to-peer transactions without an intermediary. And the most famous use case of this is Bitcoin. And that's probably the reason why there's been a complete proliferation of blockchain use cases in finance. That was kind of the first area that took off, because we could do peer-to-peer of a cryptocurrency, we could maybe do peer-to-peer fiat currency. And then the next iteration of blockchain, kind of the next level down, was the ability to automate things, to add smart contract to if this then that, or as complex as you can do it. If you can code it, you can do it, and you can automate it. The most famous one of this is likely to be Ethereum / Ethereum Classic, depending on your passions lie. And then the last kind of iteration of blockchain is a slightly less tangible one, but it's about encouraging cooperation and coordination between previously competing parties, or parties who wouldn't even think they had anything to say to other people before. And so we're seeing these consortiums spring up in a whole number of industries where, again, companies who would never have any interactions, they do everything in-house, are beginning to explore the possibilities of shared infrastructure and move away from the mindset of it's mine and I want to run it, and explore the benefits of sharing these sorts of things. And so more specifically, how can you apply all this in energy? Well, unfortunately, it doesn't quite track one-to-one. So there's been a lot of interest in peer-to-peer trading of energy, and actually we have a couple of projects in this area as well, very exploratory. But there are physical constraints trading energy that maybe aren't necessarily there with physical ones. So if you want to sell someone your electrons, unless you have a physical wire connecting you to them, it's more of an accountancy agreement than a physical agreement, like giving them clean energy, for example. But there is a lot of work in this area, so it'll be exciting to see what comes out of that shortly. The automation aspect, as I just mentioned, there are millions of new assets connected to the grid, and there are more and more and more every day. We're expecting to have 10 million by 2030, which isn't even that far away. And we're constantly looking to kind of upgrade all of the things that are already there. So the concept of a smart grid, it's talked about a lot. I don't think anyone quite has a clear idea of what exactly a smart contract is, but the ability for assets to optimize their behavior or to engage in some kind of trading logic by themselves, be that the battery just simply buying and selling electricity in your basement, or an electric vehicle actually selling its electricity back to the grid because the price signals are right, as opposed to having its own cylinder pressing buttons, which everyone knows is simply not going to happen. So again, there's a lot of exploration in this area as well. And lastly, again, the coordination and cooperation aspect, getting players around the table, communicating, thinking about how they can share infrastructure as opposed to own infrastructure. And at Electron, we're very much focused on kind of the automation piece and also the coordination and cooperation aspects of blockchain. So what are we actually doing? Please feel very suspenseful. What we're doing is we're building effectively a decentralized marketplace and a digital infrastructure for the energy sector. And there are three core modules that we're building into our platform. The first is an identity. So as I mentioned before, there are a lot of assets joining the grid, and there's very poor knowledge of where they are, and there's even worse knowledge of what they can do. As an example, everyone has an electricity meter at home, right? You have your supplier. If you're a vulnerable customer, you have to actually ring up your supplier, manually register, manually associate this vulnerable tag with with your meter ID and with your customer ID. If you change supplier, that disappears. You have to redo that process again. There is no association of data. You can't group data. It doesn't travel through the system. And I have a slide I'm going to show you in a second that illustrates the silo problem horrifyingly well. The next kind of module of the platform is a trading element. So once you have all your assets, you have them associated with the data that either about their trading capabilities, about trading preferences, etc., you can then let them trade either in an automated way, or there will obviously still be manual contracts. Like no one's going to completely automise the grid tomorrow. As an FYI, if people don't know, a lot of grid trading is not done with faxes. If it's not done with faxes, it's done with emailing spreadsheets, which you then copy the information into a proprietary spreadsheet by National Grid. I was horrified, but not horrified, kind of excited when I found out. I didn't realise that was a thing anymore, but it very much still is. And when you're dealing with a system that has to balance supply and demand on a second-by-second basis, having to pick someone up and phone them and ask, is your asset actually on, can you give me some power, doesn't actually help the urgency of the situation. And the last point, the last module of the platform we're building is all about data. It's not necessarily all on-chain. Blockchain isn't a great way to store vast amounts of data, but it is a good way to regulate who has access to data, sharing permissions to access, and changing those permissions as and when you need them. So these are the three core modules, and I'm going to do a little double click into the asset registration one now. So first of all, please don't try and read everything on this slide. It's simply not worth it. But what this is a simplified version of meter data in the energy system today. And this isn't your consumption data. This is literally a list of meter IDs, like your MPAN number. And MPANs are associated with a few key bits of information, like the address of the house it's meant to be on, the billing address associated with it, and a couple of other things like that. And so you think you don't need to have that replicated 300 times throughout the industry, but we do. And so just to pick out a few bits to focus on here, this lovely dotted line represents the data transfer network, which is how data is meant to be shared in the electricity industry. And it's referred to as, I'm not quite sure if it's affectionate or not, but it's flat pack data. So you get it, but you have to do a lot to it first before you can get any kind of meaning and use out of it. There's one party who has oversight, which is Electron, but even they only have oversight 70 to 80% of what's going on. And obviously they then hold the monopoly on all data services, on all insights into the network there, so there's absolutely nothing competitive that can happen, because only one party you can see what's going on. Other things to point out to you, there is the Competition Markets Authority. So last year there was a study done into wondering whether electricity supply is actually a market, whether it's working, because there are a lot of people that don't switch, and therefore they're on very, very expensive energy tariffs. And so the result of this very in-depth study was that all of the large energy suppliers have to go through a 4-month data cleansing exercise and then send all the details to the customers that haven't switched to Ofgem, where they can create a completely separate database and hold that information in, and that's how they can monitor it. So by the time that information was probably sent to Ofgem, it was probably already out of date, and there's no regular way to update that. So there's no, I guess the main takeaway is there's no sharing. So what you're creating is a very expensive system, because these are not trivial to maintain. One of them, the renewables obligation, which is somewhere over here, costs £4 million a year alone to run. And all of that gets passed down to consumers. So it's a very expensive system, it's clunky, and what you end up with is a system riddled with bad data. Because you don't have a regular way to update it, which they don't. You just end up with mistakes. And that's why it takes 21 days to switch your energy supplier, and a day to switch your bank account, and a day to switch your mobile phone contract. Like electricity is not that much more complicated. It doesn't need that much extra time. It's a communications and it's about data. So what would a cleaner, nicer, decentralized system look like? Well, I think that looks much nicer than about anyone else. So what Electron is building, and I just want to point out, it's not one master asset register. There'll be different ones for different assets, for different capability. But an asset registration system where there's only one, and people might be familiar with this phrase, but single source of truth, whereas there's one master list. Different users get different permissions to update it. And this will be on a private or permissioned blockchain system, not a public one. As with any regulated industry, a lot of this data is very, very sensitive. You've got to jump through a lot of hoops to even show before you can even get access to this data, even as a supplier or a participant in the industry. So it's no one's suggesting like a free-for-all, publish everyone's private information on the internet. But if you have a private permission system and you permission different players with different data requirements to see different information. And if this sounds a little bit pie in the sky, or wouldn't that be nice, we've actually got kind of a prototype up and running in our offices. We built out an asset registration system to simulate all of the meters in the UK. So we have about 55 million meters on it at the moment, and we're running kind of some scripts to simulate what switching supplies would look like. And at the moment it takes 21 days, and I can assure you it's much faster on our system than apps. So because back to the bigger platform, I won't go crazy in depth into this unless anyone wants to, but the two key takeaways would be, whilst the vertical protocol sits here, the base protocol, so currently we use Ethereum, like I say, a private version of Ethereum, and we use it because it's the best for what we want to do. We like these kind of smart contract functionality of it, and also the very vibrant kind of developer community that's very much still buzzing in there. But should that need to be switched, should Hyperledger one day become more relevant to what we can do, we can switch it, and that's where we're working towards. And the top part, so the app layer and protocol, whilst we are providing kind of APIs and apps and services, we very much envision this in the future being a place where anyone can come and build apps on top and build better services. If someone comes along and just build a better app than we can, fine, crack on. This is very much not a monopoly that we want to run. This is an innovation space where if someone can come and innovate and do it better, all the better for the participants. So to round it all up, why are we using blockchain? It's coordination ability. It's a single source of truth. It's not being run by a competitor or a dominant force within the market, so therefore no one's threatened by joining, so you can maximise participation, and you can also facilitate collaborative transactions, which again I can touch on at the end if anyone's interested to know more about them. Assurances, it's auditable. Everyone who talks about blockchain, so you literally can see what's there. You can give participants the ability to own their own data as opposed to sacrificing it to participate in the platform. So right now, well, everyone knows about Facebook and what they're doing, but other like trading platforms, Bloomberg for example, if you use it, all the data's theirs and they can do with it what they want. Kind of like you were touching on earlier, you can choose to share the data if you want to. You can choose to monetize it, or you can choose not to. Completely up to you. There's a level playing field. Everything's smart contracts there. You can see how things operate. It's auditable. It's a level playing field. No one's sneakily getting better treatment than someone else just because they're bigger. And last, it's extensible. So if you can write in smart contracts, you can come up with a better way to use the API, you can do it. You can It's a space that encourages innovation at the speed of the fastest innovator, not at the speed of the slowest incumbent. So yeah, in short, that's what we're doing. But well done to Electron. Thank you for listening. Do you have any questions?